Great. So again, welcome everyone to the first Ask Me Anything session for the Next Egg. Kevin and I are really excited to be here today and share with you a little bit about where we're at with the Next Egg and where we're hoping to go. That's my dog, sorry. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind sharing the slides, the second slide should have our agenda for today. So I'll do a quick overview of that. All right. So because it's a small group, I thought we could do some quick introductions, maybe just who you are, where you're calling in from, and what brought you to this space today. And if there's any specific questions you have or want answered, that would be helpful. Kevin is going to guide us through a very, very brief history of the Next Egg. So for some of the newer folks who I know are on this call, you can kind of see where we've been. We'll share some updates from SELC, which is the Sustainable Economies Law Center, as well as LIFT Economy in terms of the transition of the Next Egg across these two organizations. We'll share a little bit about where the Next Egg is today and some challenges and opportunities, as well as strengths and weaknesses. Then we'll open it up for Q&A. And then if we have some time near the end, we'd love to use this opportunity to get some direct feedback from you all who have joined today. So we'll have some time for that. Are there any questions about the agenda or additions that you'd like to make before we jump in with intros? All right. And Kevin, we can close the slides for now and then come back to them in a bit. But I'll jump in with a quick introduction and then pass it off. So, hey everyone, my name is Nairuti Shastri. I'm using she, her pronouns today, and I serve as the community manager for the Next Egg with LIFT Economy. So what that means is I'm providing support on the platform in terms of day-to-day management, hosting events like this, and really just being there for our community for any questions and resource-seeking opportunities that come up. And I'll pass it over to Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Mock, he and they pronouns. I'm zooming in from Kumi Island in San Diego, and I am in the current cohort of LIFT Economy. So I'm happy to be here. Just want to learn and listen. Thank you. I'll pass it over to Josh.
Hi, everyone. Josh Nussbaum, he, him, his. I am calling in from Harlem, New York. And yeah, I just like stumbled across this community a couple months ago, and I've been poking around at the resources. Generally, yeah, I work in the regenerative economic space and in the nonprofit advocacy space, and feel very aligned with what is happening here, and trying to learn personally like what to do with my retirement assets, and also just very interested in the very thorny problem of this, generally speaking, how to extract ourselves from the extractive economy. But very grateful that this exists. Thank you.
Pass to Derek.
Okay, I'm Derek. I was working on a couple of different things in conjunction with Sustainable Economics Law Center a decade ago. And so when the Next Egg thing came up, I was informed of it through them. It was part of that original cohort that did the self-directed IRA thing for my business. And so, yeah, just curious to see today where this is all going, what's going to be different.
Pass to Jen.
Hey, I'm Jen Schindel, and I am calling in from Portland. And let's see, I have been kind of peripherally involved with Next Egg, kind of trying to do some learning just as part of kind of overall kind of moving my own resources in alignment, just kind of as an overall life practice. And that has also brought me kind of through other folks here, including Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Going through the Lift Economy MBA in cohort 5. I actually also see that Marco is on here. Hi, Marco. I also did Marco's course on no harm investing and so on. So this is just something that is really, part of my process. And as I was mentioning tonight, Ruchi, was on the Next Egg platform, and then just through my own kind of capacity and resources, just it kind of fell off. And so was really, really thrilled to hear that there's just kind of some updates, and so just thought it would be a perfect time to jump back in and connect.
And we'll pass to Marco.
Yeah, glad to be here. Marco Evangelisti, he, him. I'm calling from Mexico. I've been involved in the space for a while. I was in conventional finance for a while, then very involved with slow money. I am, as Jen mentioned, 100% we are no harm investor, and teach others how to do that. And I've been a supporter of both the Sustainable Economies Law Center, that I very much appreciate, and Lift Economies. So yeah, you're in good company. So I'm gonna go off camera just because I'm hungry.
So, yeah, and anybody can drop off camera if they need to at any time, but we love to see your face as well. Monica Marie, can I pass to you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Monica Marie. I got involved with the Next Egg in graduate school, and I've kind of like watched from afar. I'm really interested to know where the Next Egg is going next. It's like kind of a joke, and I guess, and then I am interested, and I understand that the Next Egg focus is retirement, but I am also interested to see if there are any other kind of nonprofit workers on the platform that are hoping to do regenerative and participatory finance systems within the space, and connect with folks like that. So maybe not so much a question, but like, is there any way that, you know, one could put out a post or organize a space around that? Oh yeah, and sorry, no preferred pronouns. I'm in Oakland, so Ohlone land, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, Monica Marie. Laura, just to catch you up, we're just doing a round of introductions, maybe sharing our name, pronouns, where you are in the world, and why you're here. Sorry to put you on the spot since you just joined, but do you want to chime in with a check-in?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Laurel Oldany. My pronouns are she, her. I am in the Tampa Bay, Florida area. And I am along, I guess, to the extent Next Egg has existed, I've been in it from about the beginning. And it's, to me, a really valuable tool and resource. And it's something that I haven't seen exist anywhere else, and people are very intrigued when they learn about it, and I'm very happy to see it being revitalized. You know, my work is as a green living and money coach, really trying to help people do what we're talking about, move their money out of, you know, off of Wall Street onto Main Street into more regenerative investments. My work is also very much shaped by permaculture. And so thinking in terms of regenerative investments and assets, and just really helping people shift how they think about wealth. And so even just the conversations, and like Kevin, the spreadsheet that you created, this whole conversation around alternative retirement planning, I think that goes hand in hand with the conversation about, you know, putting our money into investments that may have a lower financial return, but then recognizing these other forms of wealth and capital in our lives. And just, I think, you know, I participate in the Radical Financial Planners meetings as well, and they're working on, they have a pop-up group that's working on software improvements for financial planners, and, you know, working on tools like, how do we measure like my dumpster diving for my food, and, you know, getting my clothes in a clothing swap, and these other non-monetary ways. I meet my needs. So, this balance of, okay, we're moving our money off of Wall Street, so maybe our financial returns aren't going to be as strong, but then we're also supplementing with these other regenerative investments that we haven't traditionally thought of about. And then how do we look more holistically at wealth and have spreadsheets and tracking and conversations around them to give people more confidence to be moving their money out of the conventional places. So I'm really happy to see this moving again.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, Rebecca. I see you've joined. I don't want to put you on the spot, but we're just going around with a round of introductions. I'll put in the chat just maybe name, pronouns, where you are, and any questions that you brought with you today.
Great, yeah. Rebecca, she, hers works great, and I'm in New Orleans. And I follow Lyft Economy and came across Next Egg maybe a year or so ago, and thinking about to start as a millennial, starting to save and having very little personal information for myself about real retirement besides just putting money away in in random accounts under the bed in my sock drawer, mostly joking. So, but that's kind of what, and then having an approach that's more generative and socially responsible was something I wanted to look into. So just really coming with curiosity, and I don't have any specific questions, just want to kind of see where you all are taking this and see if it fits in with my life at the moment. So that's why I'm here. Thanks for having it.
Thank you, Rebecca. Everybody, is it okay if I check in? Yeah, I'm Kevin Bayuk, he, him pronouns. I'm zooming in from unceded Coast Miwok territory. And why I'm here, very excited about the revitalization, I think somebody used that word, of the Next Egg, and really grateful for Nairudi's support and energy in this. And yeah, the questions I have is like, for all of you or anybody watching this recording, is what would make the Next Egg even more valuable to your life? What would make the Next Egg something that you want to tell others about? How could it contribute to your well-being and align with your values? Nairuti, back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. I'm really excited that we've got a smattering of different life and professional experiences, both with the Next Egg and beyond. And yeah, just really glad that y'all are able to participate. And hopefully this will be helpful to the folks at home who will eventually listen to this recording as well. Yeah, so I was hoping we could get started with a really quick overview of where the Next Egg has been, since I know there are some new folks in the room, as well as some folks who've been around for a while. So Kevin, if you wouldn't mind sharing, I believe it's the third slide.
That look right?
And yeah, and are you comfortable walking us through this?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And if I go long, I just interrupt me and keep it moving.
Sure.
So back in 2019, ancient history, something happened between then and now. I can't remember what it was, but the Next Egg was founded by Sustainable Economies Law Center, Lyft Economy, and Michael Schumann. And we kind of came to, align on this need. Like I think Laura was saying, there's something missing. But there's actually different vectors that brought us together. Sustainable Economies Law Center have been doing a lot of work in developing some of their clients and initiatives around, for example, the People Powered Solar Cooperative and the East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative. These community-driven efforts to meet needs within community that are largely self-determined. There was like a financing gap. Like, how do we fund these things? Because their potential was very limited in either requiring philanthropic contribution or municipal or state or federal funding, and even appealing to the communities. These questions emerge of like, well, what about like using my retirement savings to invest? Is that possible? What, I have all this money in my 401k and I actually don't want it in Coca-Cola and Alphabet and Apple stock. Like, what do I do about that? So they were kind of coming into like, how do we finance these important things that are, developed and growing within communities? Michael, his most recent book, unless he's written another one since then, was about kind of this idea of leveraging our savings or retirement savings for community investing. And he's got a series of excellent books about the development of locally self-reliant economies, in contrast as an alternative to kind of the business as usual, highly centralized, multinational corporation exploitation economy. And so he's been Local Dollars, Local Cents is one of them. He's written a number of great books. And for him, he's like, where he acknowledges both in his writing and in discourse, like, hey, there's some barriers. It's not super simple. There's things that can happen. There's degrees of freedom. There's definitely actions to be taken, but it's challenging. And so where's the community practice to figure out these challenges together, and how do we, navigate? And certain expertise might be needed, and what are the common questions? Just the landscape of the nuts and bolts, like how do we get to that place where we can do more local community investing is something that he's passionate about. At Lift Economy, and I'm trying to be brief here, and I will be much more brief for the rest of the timeline. At Lift Economy, one of our guiding kind of theories of change hypotheses is that business as usual racialized capitalism has these traps that really some people fall into, and that traps that also categorically exclude others. An example of one of those traps might be like the healthcare system, or the idea of the notion of retirement is a trap. Why is it a trap? Well, when we work with next economy institutions, people who are developing co-ops or multi-stakeholder cooperatives or B Corps or other types of organizations that are trying to provide needed goods and services, but do it in values-aligned ways, they come to us and they're like, I'm trying to recruit people or hire people, but they want to know what our retirement benefit plan is. And I've been looking at the retirement benefits plans and they all suck. There's got to be another way for us to be able to answer the question that people expected in the marketplace of like, oh, that if I'm going to have a job or a vocation or dedicate my life energy to a place, that I need to have some kind of employment benefit of having a retirement plan, but I can't find one that actually matches with my values. And so it's this trap, and it's a barrier to the development of the next economy. Simultaneously, we also, as Laura mentioned, there's also another hypothesis within Lift Economy about that the next economy will always be elusive and impossible to fully realize its potential to have an economy that works for the benefit of all life, unless there's a broad culture change in terms of how we meet our needs. To looking at more producer culture and local self-reliance. So those two things meant for Lift Economy. We came together and talked about it and said, hey, there's something missing. How should we do this? Well, what if we, put our thinking together and just actually invited in a community of brilliant people that want to be part of a community of practice to evolve this thinking, ask good questions, research together, and maybe we can actually leverage the collective, not only intelligence, but potentially the collective, I guess, purchasing power might be the right word. If we organized enough people that we're all intending to trying to fix this problem, maybe because there's so many people and they represent enough retirement savings dollars or enough energy, we could actually reduce some of the barriers to more self-direction, more community investing, some of the outcomes that I just discussed. Okay, so we got a community together, and so we started doing some research. We interviewed a lot of organizations, gathering feedback and ideas. Is this invalidating? Is this a real problem? What's the nature of the problem? Launched a Mighty Networks platform, bringing people together, hundreds of people together, which you all are members of. We launched the first hatch, and I think it was Derek who said he was part of that, to support individuals who have, independent contractor income to set up some type of solo 401k, and through the group power to actually identify custodians or plans that could lower the cost, the custodial cost of self-directed retirement account investing has been one of the barriers, not the barrier, but a barrier. And so there's research and a group, and we were able to find partners to reduce that cost to, I think, the lowest that we've seen in the country. So it didn't exist before as a product. We hosted a bunch of webinars for collective learning. In the next year, again, I think this thing, COVID happened, and so things slowed down a little bit, but we were still online communicating, and we had more webinars. And as we were having these webinars, we started working on like employers and how like Lyft Economy went through the kind of hurdles of establishing a worker self-directed retirement plan, which is pretty challenging and has its nuances that make it less replicable than we thought in the beginning. But it's the discovery process. We didn't find anybody who had like done this before, or those that had done it, like a couple law groups, and we interviewed them, put them on webinars to share information about what they did and what nuances they discovered. 2022, the pace slowed down a little bit, but we kept sharing information. And at some point this year, in 2022, near the end of 2022, the Sustainable Economies Law Center in particular had a kind of a reckoning with their original reason for participating in the next egg. And in that reckoning, they kind of asked the question, like, should we continue this experiment? There seemed to be ERISA, the body of law that governs retirement accounts, is so convoluted and broken. They're like, maybe we should, I don't know if this is a dead end. Like, it seems there's so many barriers, and the critical mass seems so elusive. Maybe we should put a pause on this, because they're doing such other great important work. Like Mark is a supporter, I'm a supporter of the Sustainable Economies Law Center. And so they asked, should we wrap it up and just be done with it, or is there something here to carry on? And at Lyft Economy, Erin Axelrod, who just had a baby 2 days ago, it's so exciting, otherwise she'd be here. She had a lot of energy and said, no, I believe that this community of practice needs to live on. And so we came to an agreement in early 2023 about transferring kind of the project to Lyft Economy to be stewarded on an ongoing basis. And we'll talk about some of the details of that agreement, of what Lyft is kind of accountable for, at least in the next little period. And the first thing that was on our mind is actually finding energy within our capacity to put leadership behind this community, and that we went through an extensive recruiting process, which led us to the all-star Nairuti, who is here with us today. And so, Nairuti, that's anything I missed, or do you want to?
No, that was very helpful and super comprehensive. Thank you. So at this point, what I'll just say, two things. There's going to be, at least for another 10 minutes, there will be some information shared with you. And so I've just shared a link to a Jamboard, where if you have questions that are coming up as we're kind of sharing these updates, I'd love for you to put them in the Jamboard as sort of a parking lot. So then when we get to the Q&A section, we can kind of look at that Jamboard and talk through the questions that y'all have. And so I know Kevin mentioned during that kind of process, particularly from 2022 into 2023, Selk and particularly Janelle Orsi, thought a lot about what does it mean to reckon with the institution of retirement as a whole, and how do our kind of systems of finance that exist kind of hinder progress towards a more regenerative system. And so on the next slide, there's just a really quick clip from Janelle just explaining, just coloring in some of the details of why that transition happened and some of the really big questions that we as an initiative are reckoning with when we think about retirement. So Kevin, if you click, it should just play. And it should stop at around 6 minutes. So if it doesn't, I'll just
has been
wave you
something
down.
we've had to think about a lot because we want to channel capital to nourish the clients we work with. And so yeah, these are some of our early securities education cartoons. But yeah, over the years, we've worked a lot on the side of the businesses receiving capital. So helping them figure out what do they need to do to make a security offering. And like we worked, I'll go back to the list, East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, we helped them do the Reg A crowd financing offering so they can sell shares in a bunch of states now. We worked with California Farm Link to do a California direct public offering, People Power Solar Cooperative to do an offering. But then it was kind of like, all right, so where's all the money going to come from? And that's when we really started to shift our focus over to the investors and the pools of funds that we could tap. And the Next Egg is a project that we co-founded with Lyft Economy and Michael Schumann. It's now a fiscally sponsored project under the umbrella of Sustainable Economies Law Center. But we started it because we thought there's a gap here. People want to tap into their retirement funds, use them to invest. And most people don't know how to do it, or the resources out there to support them are very limited, or they're too costly. And so we did a lot of learning and education. We used our collective buying power to give people access to solo 401ks, which are retirement plans that give an individual checkbook control. So we felt like we made a lot of progress. We had a lot of, webinars on like where to invest and how to decide. But over time, because it was something we just kept going deeper and deeper into, I just felt more and more like it's such a narrow, like we're working in such narrow confines, and started to question whether it was even a good place to go. So there's that. Yeah, I'm constantly questioning the very things that I think are great. I had all this clarity that we were, doing something really important, and then I started to question all of it. But anyways, the slide in here shows that there's a lot of our past webinars that you could go watch if you're curious. There's roughly 2 categories. There's a lot of how-to stuff that we did related to retirement savings. And then there's a lot now that are focused on asking big foundational questions. So yeah, it all started when we were just looking at 401k and IRA law and starting to wonder if these are even good vehicles for holding our money and investing them. And the Next Egg had been really focused on these 2 vehicles as the primary place where most retirement savings live, and the space where we have the opportunity to self-direct our investments. And so we created a lot of tools to support people. But I'll just share 4 of the problems that came up that it felt like we just couldn't get around them. So one is just the very concept of retirement savings is to take money out of our control, out of our hands and out of our control. But the very thing we were trying to do with the Next Egg is give people control. And so that's part of the reason why it felt like a constant fight of like, we felt kind of like hackers or something, like we were trying to like figure out all the little loopholes to get people control, when ultimately the very intent of them is to take our control away. So that was kind of an aha moment of realizing we're only going to make so much progress under the core design of these plans. So then a second problem is, okay, we've taken the money away from our control, and now we're applying some rules to it. And those are the rules that come from trust law that say, okay, you don't control your money now, this trustee controls it. And the trustee has these rules that they must follow, the duty of loyalty, duty of care. And both of these have turned out to be very challenging. One is this rule on self-dealing. I didn't expect it to come up so much, but the more I started thinking about, because I started one of these solo 401ks for myself, started thinking about investing in, say, the local solar co-op that I'm part of, the local real estate cooperative that I'm part of. The problem is I'm part of them. If I got any benefit as a result of using my 401k to invest in them, that technically violates self-dealing rules. And so, and the rules around these things are so tight because there's been so much abuse by retirement plan trustees over the years. And the law's not very smart and nuanced. It can't tell the difference between bad behaving trustees and socially beneficial trustees. So the law creates these very solid rules that just say no self-dealing whatsoever. So then the other rule around duty of care is generally interpreted to mean you're going to hold these assets, make sure they're going to be there when the person retires, and also grow them. that's come to be understood as what a prudent person will do. So you see this word prudent person, prudent investor, prudent man under trust laws, and also ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which you may have seen in the news, and there's an article linked called Rethinking Retirement Savings, where a legal intern and I wrote for the Harvard Law Review, kind of unpacking what ERISA says about trustee rules and realizing how broken they are. But basically it says you can't forgo any opportunity to profit. You can't forgo financial returns. So it means if the world is giving you an opportunity to invest in something terrible and give you the greatest financial return, a prudent person would not forgo that. So there was that. And then for a while we had some hope because Trump made some rules that made that seem very, very impenetrable, that rule. And then Biden came along and said, you know, come on, Department of Labor, let's loosen things up a little bit here. And everyone got very excited. But if you read the rules that have been proposed, they don't really change anything. They still say you can't forgo financial returns. They just said workforce considerations, climate considerations, those might be financial considerations. But again, don't forgo the returns. So I just sort of felt like if people are treating that as progress, we're not going to make very much progress. And then it was also like, the more I thought about it, thinking about the things we were investing in and the people who were founding them, a lot of Black and Indigenous led enterprises, I was like, yeah, how much good can we do without foregoing financial return, given all the harm that's already been done, all of the wealth that's already been stolen from such communities.
Awesome. So I shared just the beginning of that video from Janelle, and she's got a ton of other videos, great cartoons, and a lot of other explanatory content. Not to scare us away from doing this work, but to kind of pay nod to the sort of spectrum of possibility. So one of the things that I think the Next Egg has taken on as sort of a perspective shift in this new iteration is, you know, there's a world in which ERISA law is changed. We're able to kind of finagle these rules enough and have that policy and advocacy change so we have more checkbook control over our retirement savings, or even beyond that, we renegotiate the idea of retirement and have all of these incredible safety nets and resources for everyone, and there's no need for retirement. But before we get there, right, there are all of these other interim steps. And the Next Egg is really intended to be a community for folks across that entire journey. And so that was the kind of clarifying piece I wanted to make available to you all, as well as the folks who are watching the recording, in terms of who's our audience and who are we kind of speaking to and speaking with as a result of our programming. So at this point, we're going to share a really quick update about what that agreement between SELC and LIFT was. So Kevin, if you share slide 5, maybe you can just quickly walk us through what we're working on through the end of the year, and then I can share what's next for the Next Egg.
Great. So yeah, we came to an agreement with the Sustainable Economies Law Center to take over management of the platform, which is just day-to-day responding to members' questions, requests, curating responses or connections within the platform of like, oh, you asked this question, somebody else already provided this answer, is this helpful for you? That type of community management tasks around the Mighty Networks platform for the Next Egg community practice, community of research. And then we would design, launch, and, you know, kind of analyze the data from members through a survey or surveys to really understand the needs of those who are already here or joining. And then there's kind of the additional to the platform is like, there was always a notion that the more people on the platform, the more potential leverage we have to sponsor advocacy initiatives or to leverage cost sharing of the development of new products within retirement planning, et cetera. So this idea of recruiting new members across that spectrum of interest that Nairuti just described. There's also the dissemination of the existing content. So you saw in Janelle's share there's like lots of webinars and articles. There's been a lot of posts on the platform. And before Nairuti joined, just self-admittedly from everybody involved in the Next Egg, it wasn't very accessible. And so creating something that's more public facing, an index, if you will, to make the information available was something that Lyft said we'll take that on as part of the charitable purpose of the Next Egg as a project of the Sustainable Economies Law Center at the time. And we would develop and post additional content as we find it, as a means to engage and activate the community on the platform. And a number of you have developed content on this call, the people on this call that also, again, this in this curatorial dissemination of additional content is part of the objective. And then this third piece of actually continuing that work. So the webinar, the webinars are still really good content, and there's planning of developing additional content because there's new partners and partners that latent partners who haven't yet activated sharing their information and what they've discovered and what they've tried. So there's kind of this development of new content and additional webinars or Zoom calls that can be recorded and shared. And then this final piece, we agreed at Lyft that we would do something to try and advance the vision that to kind of animate the imagination of those on the platform of some kind of campaign is a rough word for it, but what would it mean to set an audacious goal? And even if it takes a generation to get there, but of the 35 trillion plus dollars in retirement savings, what would it mean to peel away a trillion of that into community-based, values-aligned investments that actually create the infrastructure to maybe obviate the need for retirement savings in the future. So this kind of stacked function vision, and that's something that requires somebody to do the work on, I guess. Otherwise, I don't know that the vision will come together itself. Maybe it will. But I think the people to do it are here. Nairuti, did you want me to go to the next slide?
No, that's good for now. So yeah, thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. So these activities are intended to take place between now and the end of 2023. And then part of my work has been, I know, Laura, you commented on the post and I got some emails from folks about the strategic partnerships that we're pursuing to figure out yes, we can articulate a vision, but moving forward, is there a coalition of organizations and community members who can hold this work in addition to the Next Egg moving forward? So I'm going to take a pause here because I know we've been talking at you for a while. And what I'd like to do is, before we share the kind of SWOT analysis, I'd love for folks to open up the Jamboard and write down maybe 1 or 2 questions you have about the Next Egg at this point. If you haven't used a Jamboard before, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind demonstrating how to add a question.
Okay, so I'm typing, who are the partners we have not thought of yet? And I don't know if it's a well-articulated question, but I made it as let me see, I don't know what you can see of my shared screen, but I went over here to the left side where it says sticky note. I clicked sticky note and I can change the color of the sticky note, and I just typed in some words and I clicked save, and you can see it's now on the Jamboard, and I can, adjust it and turn it and make it bigger, that kind of thing. So that's what I believe, Nairuti, you're inviting us to do, is to add you can add an image or text box, but sticky note is the one that I'm familiar with.
Awesome. And I see, Tamina, you've just joined us. Hello. Just to catch you up, Tamina, we are just going through and adding in whatever questions we have about the Next Egg. based on the presentation that was given up until now. So if you don't have any questions, it's okay. I'm sure you had some from the initial email I sent to you, but we're glad to have you here. And maybe after this, we can have a little intro from you too, Tamina, since other folks got to share as well. But yeah, let's go ahead and take like 3 minutes to write our questions into the Jamboard.
And if anybody is like Jamboard, not familiar, I'm intimidated by it, if you put something in the Zoom chat, I can type it in here as well. So if your Zoom chat is what you're comfortable with, I'm happy to try and take those and put them on the Jamboard for you. Thank you.
All right, let's take about 30 more seconds. If there's a question you're itching to share now, otherwise we'll continue on with the last part of our presentation and then open it up for the full Q&A. All right, super helpful. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind showing us slide 6, I can walk us through that and then we'll open it up for the Q&A. So now that you know a little bit, now that we're on the same page at least about the history of the Next Egg, we did want to share a little bit about where we currently stand and what are the sort of the internal elements, challenges and opportunities, as well as the external ones that kind of contextualize the Next Egg today. So in thinking about internal stuff, right, we're very excited that we have about 300 Next Egg members who are on the platform. So even though there's varied levels of engagement, we are still that many people strong. We now have myself as well as Erin when she returns from parental leave, about 1.5 people working with their time on the Next Egg, managing the platform and being able to facilitate additional content. And then we have some really incredible case stories and anecdotes of folks who have begun to redistribute their wealth or have at least tried to personally consider how retirement looks differently. So from a narrative perspective, we have a lot of content out there. At the same time, currently on the Next Egg, anecdotally, we do have more folks who would identify as middle class or upper middle class and have access to retirement savings. As I mentioned earlier, the Next Egg is intended to be a cross-class and interracial space. And so ideally, we're able to provide support and infrastructure for folks with or without retirement savings. But right now, that's kind of our population skews towards that sector. And then a lot of our members are eager to have just very specific technical support, right? As Kevin mentioned earlier in his kind of recounting of the research that Selk had worked on, this is a really obscure body of law and finance. And so right now on staff, we don't have certified lawyers or accountants anymore, especially since Selk has departed. We, of course, have folks within the membership who are offering their expertise, but that is something that we've considered in terms of core team support, folks who are able to offer full-time their expertise in responding to a lot of the technical questions our members have. And then in terms of opportunities and threats, so these are thinking about kind of what's external to the Next Egg that's shaping our context. So the first thing I wanted to mention is, of course, a group of 300 people is great, and that's not going to be enough humans or capital to be able to move our goal of $1 trillion off of Wall Street into Main Street. And second, so far, a lot of our tracking has been self-reported, and we don't have access to really good data about, what is the impact of the Next Egg in particular. We, of course, have anecdotes of people telling us how much money they've moved, but nothing that's comprehensive. At the same time, as we mentioned earlier, there are really strong partnerships with folks in the solidarity economy movement who are thinking about guiding this work. And there are newer and better investment vehicles being created every single day. And there are lots of people kind of working on that. And then the last thing I'll mention is as part of this transition between the Next Egg moving from Selk to Lyft, though we have funding to support my role through the end of the year and a lot of excitement about the project and initiative and a lot of interest in continuing, there is, of course, the larger financial question of what is the resourcing available to sustain, of course, not only the platform, but this larger movement to reimagine retirement. Yes. Anything, Kevin, that you would want to add or nuance here before we move forward?
Nothing to add.
All right. Okay, so at this point, we can kind of close out of the slides, and we'd love to just hear from the folks who are present here. What questions do you have? What can Kevin and I do to support? Maybe we can see what questions are alive now, and then we can revisit the Jamboard, but wanted to prioritize whatever is coming up for folks right now.
I have a question. So is Selk no longer involved in this project? Because one of the strengths was that there was legal expertise, so they knew where the boundaries are, because there's this the challenge we had with slow money, right? Because every time we talk about investing and finance and so on, there are so many laws and regulations that make it really hard for people that could perceive as intermediary in any shape and form. And so having Janelle involved, at least or a Selk, was providing a little bit of a safety net in terms of what could be done while maintaining the compliance with the law. So that's my question.
Thanks. Kevin, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah, what we talked about when we set up the agreement about transitioning kind of the management work and advancing the information sharing is that in terms of like day-to-day curation or management of information or production of new content, this would no longer be a priority of the Law Center to work on it. But to the extent that there are members of the Law Center who are members of the community, and we can direct questions to them, they're happy to be supportive as just allies. They still believe in the supporting the community of practice in these questions. So we can ask questions and, you know, maybe get answers, but it's not a project. It's not a project of itself anymore. So I know that sounds vague. We have yet to see, Marco, how it's going to play out. So like if there's a legal question that comes up or we run into a guardrail where there's uncertainty, you know, I know from Janelle in particular, I probably would not ask certain questions to Janelle just because I know she's busy on other priorities. But within the Law Center, there's other members of the team that have participated in Next Egg discussions and I believe are currently on the platform. I believe I'll have to look on who's currently on the platform, but Ricardo, Sue Bennett, who's not a lawyer, but is director of ops, have Mohit have been on the platform before. So
yeah, so let me give you a specific example. Let's imagine members want to bring to the rest of the members an investment opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is publishing it within this context public solicitation or general solicitation, or right? Because there are certain investments that where they're private offerings, so you cannot post them on anything that is considered public. And so, would this be considered a public forum? In other words, would say, hey, there is this opportunity. I'm thinking about Jenny Casson project in Baltimore, right?
Yep.
Would that be already a violation of the securities laws that say for certain offering that are private, you cannot, you know, post them in a public forum? So that would be like a one question that I might have that has, you know, legal implications.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example in the great example in that particular case, not only because Jenny has something going in Baltimore, but Jenny is a member of the Next Egg. So the way we could say like, hey, I have something that I want to bring to the Next Egg at Jenny. We could tag Jenny and say, hey, do you think it would be copacetic for us to share about this? And Jenny has been an active member and is able to respond. Jason also and members of his law firm are also involved in the Next Egg. So there are lawyers still involved, even if the self is not stewarding this as a project. So we can bring those questions to legal professionals to get guidance. But you're right that in that case, we would have to like ask for guidance in advance before, you know, presenting an opportunity. But even if it's an opportunity that in terms of a solicitation or presenting it to the group, my understanding is we can ask questions like that about the possibility of sharing an idea or sharing an opportunity on the platform without running afoul of the security compliance. Does that make sense? So the question you asked, like, can I share about this opportunity that's out there? I think you can ask that kind of question on the platform. And they're reducing Tobias has been super helpful as well.
Other questions that are live right now before we turn to the Jamboard? All right, well, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind screen sharing the Jamboard, I can read some of those out and we can kind of see who's able to answer what. Okay, so I can take this question. What is the relationship between Just Futures and the Next Egg. So Just Futures is actually one of the strategic partners that we've been chatting with. So for context, my understanding, I know Aaron was the last person to chat with Micah, but my understanding is that Just Futures is specifically organizing employers to offer more sustainable retirement benefit options. So we've been in conversations about ways in which we could either use some of the resources that we've curated with the Next Egg to support the folks that they're reaching out to, but also just buttress our own strategy to kind of move money from the employer perspective. So that is something that we've been in conversation with. There's no like specific MOU or anything like that, but we are aware of Just Futures and have had some conversations with them. Anything else, Kevin, that you'd add about the work of Just Futures? Or does that feel like an apt summary?
I think that was a good summary.
Okay. Let's look at, okay. The focus seems to be on solving a financing problem for local regenerative economies. Has there been any reimagining retirement itself / filling the needs of retirees? I can take a go at this question, and then Kevin would love to hear your thoughts. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I'm really passionate about based on my own social identities in relationship to retirement is really being able to involve people in the conversation who maybe do not have access to retirement savings or are just thinking about like, what does a livable future look like for me in my elderhood? And so a lot of the work that Erin has actually been leading and also practicing in her own life is this idea of next economy living. And so thinking about, what are the needs that I would need to meet as an older person? And how can I meet those without needing to rely on monetary capital? So that could look like, co-housing. I know a lot of Next Egg members in the past have shared opportunities like that they've either themselves pursued or that they have access to in their own communities. Same questions around food security, healthcare. Recently, we had Dexter Kearney share about thinking about an HSA, a health savings plan, and what that could potentially look like in this sort of next economy sphere. So there is definitely momentum and interest in questioning retirement. And there is space and interest for those conversations on the Next Egg. But the majority of our programming to date, including the retirement practice group, as well as the first hatch, was really focused on folks who had retirement savings and were looking to do something more sustainable. Anything else to add, Kevin?
I might say that, or support what you said about the intersection of these is like, and maybe add a little bit that for so many people in the United States, but also around the world, the reimagining of retirement is a requirement because they're actually excluded from, they don't have savings. I forget the percentage, the enormous percentage of Americans who are a paycheck away from bankruptcy or don't have more than enough savings for a minor medical emergency. And so even though there's $35 trillion for middle class and upper class individuals, if you will, the class was something that Rudy brought in earlier, there's a huge percentage of the people that where retirement has to be, the notion of retirement has to be redefined and reimagined. And well, in our discovery, like and I already mentioned, Next Economy Living is talking about things like co-housing or different forms of minimalism, or even where is that community-owned, multi-stakeholder, cooperative, direct primary care health clinic that provides at-cost services for the community. Those institutions that could support for a reimagining of retirement also don't exist in the way they're not realized fully. They're hard to do, meaning you have to have, in some cases, a lot of privilege and positionality to even change your lifestyle in terms of habits, behaviors, and norms, in terms of what's accessible to you. And so the need for those alternative institutions to make it easier to be able to make lifestyle choices that enable for a reliable living in elderhood or older age, or in differentiated ability. That idea of reimagining retirement using the 35 trillion, if we could use some of that 35 trillion to actually establish and support those institutions that make it easier for everybody, or more people, and eventually everybody, to have a reliably prosperous elderhood. That is something that is like where these two things meet. So if we can use the 35 trillion, not just to take it off Wall Street so that we could make money in the local bougie, food economy or something like that, that's definitely less bad than supporting Halliburton and Chevron. But the idea that the 35 trillion could actually be used to create alternative institutions that make reliably prosperous elderhood possible for everybody is something that's part of this project. So I hope there's some jargon in there, but I hope that makes sense. Now, Rudy, I actually want to check with you. Did anything I say there make sense? I hope it was landing at least a little bit.
Yeah, just wanted to uplift. Josh had a question, or I guess a wondering of if there's some synergy in redirecting a high proportion of the pooled resources into bolstering those types of institutions. And I just mentioned really briefly that, yes, there's definitely a lot of energy and interest. And I think a lot of what Janelle and the Selk team found in that kind of redirecting space was what she mentioned in that video about the self-dealing rule, the prudent investor rule. There are a lot of these like legal and financial technicalities that make it difficult to move resources into things that would prepare us for a more livable future. And that's sort of the like loopholing work that we all need to be doing together. I feel like that leads us into this question, maybe, where it says, how do we involve people in a conversation about the systemic issues of who controls, who decides, who benefits, includes a gift economy like the one I use in my work? Does the person who wrote this question want to provide any additional context? Otherwise, we can take a go. All right, Kevin, you want to kick us off and then I can jump in?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's a great conversation, and I could imagine a number of ways for that. How do we involve people in that conversation? I think the idea, we use the word webinar, but like sponsoring these types of conversations within the membership and recruiting more people to be part of this community of practice to talk about in conversation about the systemic issues, and kind of each of these topics are perfectly suited, I think, to what the Next Egg community is about. Like when it says like who controls, I imagine that's like who is controlling capital, resources, infrastructure, so many different things that are being controlled. Who decides where resources go? Who decides where investment goes? Who decides what investments are possible? Who decides the legal parameters that govern what's possible? Those are great questions to ask and have conversations about. And then who benefits? Who benefits from investment possibilities? Who benefits from changing habits, behaviors, and norms to a more accessible, reliably prosperous future for all? You know, those are excellent things for conversation within the community. And the idea of gift economy, or sometimes the words informal economy are used, this idea of like non-monetary exchanges for meeting people's needs, I would put that in that kind of, when I say things like what are the habits, behaviors, and norms, and Laura mentioned earlier about, you know, like things like clothing swaps and other forms of non-monetary or informal economy exchanges as ways to meet needs. That I think those are spot on the type of things that this community would, you know, be wanting to converse about. How do we involve more people? I think there's a question there of like, kind of like, how do we invite other people into the conversation who are not already part of the community practice? And then how do we animate and engage is a word that's used. How do we engage the people who are already, you know, involved in the community of practice? There's one part there of like, you know, who controls and who decides. There might be questions around that, around like who decides what the webinars are, or who controls, you know, I don't know. Well, those are also things that are definitely, you know, open conversations for this community. So it's not the case that like Lift Economy has like, these are the 10 webinars that we have to do before September or something like that. It's more like, what is the community going to value? And hearing from the community, so letting the community who is already gathered around the scene to not only inform the decision, but we're very happy to also, you know, practice different forms of participatory democracy to arrive at some type of consensual alignment as to what type of conversations even get had. So I think all across the board, I see a lot of ways in which this question is, I think, spot on in terms of the values of the Next Egg project. Rudy?
No, nothing to add there. I also just know that Derek chatted in before he left the piece about systemic issues in the AMA. So I have a note to reach out to him. And I think the question in pink and yellow were from you and me, Kevin. So I'm going to skip those and let's answer the pension funds. Then I want to make sure we have at least 10 minutes in our breakout rooms for some of those focus group questions. So yeah, are we thinking about pension funds and what is being done about them? We are, in fact, thinking about pension funds. There have been some threads on the Mighty Networks platform about folks who had specific questions about pension funds. But right now, the Next Egg doesn't have a, you know, specific how-to or guided strategy for how to support folks who have pension funds and are looking to redirect that capital. But if you have suggestions or resources to share, we'd be excited about them and open to listening and sharing those resources out to our community. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left, and I do want to take some of that time to throw some questions back out to y'all. So what I'm going to do is I've created some breakout rooms for us. Kevin will be leading one of them, and I'll be leading the other. And in those breakout rooms, if you go to the slide deck, we're going to be chatting through 3 questions. I'm just going to put them in the chat. Here they are. And Marco, yes, I can. I think there's a link called Webinar Collections that I will chat you. But the questions this is really just for us to use this opportunity to solicit some feedback from y'all as members who are on the platform or are potential partners of this initiative. So the first thing is really just what's been useful to you about the platform and what else would you like to see? The second is more broadly speaking, what is your relationship to retirement? And kind of what are you imagining your elderhood might look like? And then if you're willing to share in this space, how much money do you currently have saved for retirement, if any? And are there any factors that are important to you when deciding to make an investment? So these are all questions that are going to be in the member survey that we're launching either tomorrow or the next day as a follow-up to this webinar. But since y'all are here, we'd love to get some in-person feedback and thoughts. So yeah, if folks don't have any other questions, I'm gonna go ahead and open the breakout rooms, but anything else, and we'll be in the breakout rooms probably until 57 after and do a quick close with the remaining 3 minutes. All right, so the breakout rooms are opening and I'll close them in about 10, 13 minutes. Sound good? Thanks. Hey, Monica Marie, welcome back.
Hey.
We just have folks in breakout rooms right now, sharing their feedback in response to a couple of questions that I'm gonna chat to you right now, and then I will put you in a breakout room if you are okay with that.
Yep, that's great. Let me just grab this. Okay, cool. I'm ready.
Okay, great. Let me put you in a room. All right, you should, if you click breakout rooms in the panel below, you should be able to, oh, perfect, great. Hey, Rebecca. I can join you in that room. I'll be right there if you want to go back to the breakout room.
Sure, that sounds good.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm so glad you were able to join today.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for getting back to me.
Yeah, of course.
And thanks for all the work you put in to kind of launching this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I think maybe you might have stepped out before the instruction. So this was just an opportunity for us to ask you all some questions to see how we could better support you with the next egg. So we can either use this time, we probably have like 6-ish minutes together.
Okay.
So we can either use that to answer any questions that you have or get your feedback on the next egg. If I remember correctly, you were on the platform, but then left for a little bit. Is that correct?
I was on the platform
Yeah.
and I just did like the trial, I think, for like 1 month or something.
Yeah.
I'm remembering that I was trying to get my co-op at the time to look into retirement plans for us. But now my situation, I've transitioned out, so my situation has changed.
Sure, yeah.
But I was only on it for a little bit, and from what I remember, as someone who's not familiar with retirement plans, it was just a little overwhelming. But I
Sure.
imagine for someone who already has a 401k and their retirement plan set up, that it probably is like a smoother transition.
Yeah.
So, but I am definitely curious about it as I'm thinking about my life and all those pieces. I think, and this may already be there, I may have just gotten like overwhelmed and not been in the right headspace for it.
Sure,
So
yeah.
it's totally, if it's there, you can stop me. But I think for me, I need a lot more. I like when you talked about assistance, setting plans up, that is more my speed, I think, for this, because there's so much around setting up retirement. Like there's the legal aspect, there's the financial, taxes, long-term planning. So there's so many boxes to check that I tend to get overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's super helpful feedback. And I will just say, because I was on the platform before I stepped into this role, and I actually had a very similar experience to you. I remember joining and being kind of like, this is really wild. There's like a lot of information here. And it was pretty self-directed because I joined after like the practice group and the first hatch had already happened. And so it very much felt like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. So you're definitely not the only one who's felt that way. I think what you mentioned about having assistance setting plans up, that's definitely what a lot of folks within our like the millennial generation are interested in kind of having from the platform. But at this point, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have like legal or financial people to walk you through an entire process, which is why we've really been relying on folks to ask specific questions that they have, and then kind of leaning in on our community, which includes, you know, financial services folks, financial planners, lawyers, to be able to kind of jump in and provide assistance in that way. Something I will say though, and you know, you and I can connect one-on-one afterwards too, based on your needs. We have had experience kind of guiding folks through a process for self-directed savings. So I could kind of curate like a process for you that would require like, okay, you're interested in self-directed savings. Maybe that looks like in self-directed IRA or a self-directed 401k. Here are like 3 YouTube videos that like talk about what those are and what questions you should have, here are companies that you can reach out to directly and talk to them about opening up an account and starting that process. And then here are a list of either values aligned, here's a list of values aligned financial planners that can offer services in terms of guiding you through that at either a pro bono kind of situation or like a reduced rate. So that is support I can offer at this point, but it's helpful to know that, like, you know, having sort of a cohort-based model where it's like you're coming in without any sort of orientation towards retirement savings, and then having somebody kind of walk you through what your options are. And then once you select an option, like, okay, here's where you can go. So how does that land with you right now?
Yeah, that would be, I'm definitely interested in learning more about both of those, like both the cohort model and also what you're offering.
Okay.
Yeah. And hearing more. I do think the cohort model would potentially work for me. It's almost like a flow, like I'm almost imagining a flow chart. If you like work at this type of organization, go here kind of thing. I know we have to get back, but yeah.
Right. No, that's super helpful. And, you know, honestly, those are resources I would like for myself too. So it makes sense to kind of bring those onto the platform. Yeah, any other questions or suggestions? And then I can close the rooms and bring the other group back as well.
I think there is this question around how much money, if any, do you have currently saved? And I think I'd like to know, like, how much, like, for retirement specifically, like $500 or something that's really minimal. And I'd like to know, like, what is the minimum? Like, what does Next Egg think is the minimum to start?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, there's actually no minimum for like participating in the Next Egg or like generally when you're thinking about retirement savings. We have a lot of folks on the platform who don't have retirement savings and are there to either figure out how to save or like thinking about savings kind of like you are in a more values aligned way. So there's definitely no minimum. I would say that based on surveys that we've conducted in the past, people have anywhere from $1,000. Yeah, just finishing up what I was saying. People have anywhere from $1,000 to $50,000 to more, and are kind of have shared that anecdotally with the Next Egg team. But yeah, no minimum requirements for participation. Welcome back, everyone.
Bringing us back, Monica Marie was really sharing something important, and Monica Marie, I wonder if you still have that thread, but you could finish that thought. You were talking about an enhancement to the platform where people could talk about many aspects of the economy, and then it cut for me.
Yeah, just like more like what are we thinking about alternative economic stuff outside of retirement, and how many people are interested in doing that? Because I'm very hungry to meet other people of color who are interested in this kind of work. And that is not like, usually I'm like one person of color or a couple people of color in like a mostly white space. And I'm like, where are other folks of color who are doing finance work and who are doing it like in an alternative way? So that's something that I'm really interested in. So like, are there other people that could use this as a space to come together and congregate around that thinking?
That was very important. Thank you, Monica. Now, Rudy, back to you. Sorry.
No apologies. Thanks for uplifting that, Monica Marie. Okay, well, folks, that actually brings us to the end of our session today. We have like 50 seconds left. So just wanted to share a lot of gratitude for y'all for being here and participating and listening. If you have additional questions that come up or feedback that you want to share with either Kevin or myself, we'll go ahead and share our contact info right here. You're welcome to write it down. And yeah, this will be shared on the platform within the next day or so, alongside the member survey, which shout out, the first 40 people get a free copy of Lift Economy's new book. So if you fill it out, that could be you. So thanks very much for participating, and we hope to stay in touch with all of you.
Yeah, good meeting everybody.
Yes.
Thanks, Marco.
So much for those.
Bye.
you.
Bye bye.
Thanks very much. See you.